Welcome to Emotional Healing for Christian Women, the podcast where faith meets inner healing. Imagine waking up without the weight of shame, guilt, fear, and loneliness. Imagine finally feeling worthy, confident, and at peace. And doing this with God by your side. That's the healing we can begin together. I'm Marvel Adeyemi, a psychotherapist and a faith-led women's coach. Let's get started. Today I have an amazing author with me and a lovely lady, Ruth Ferguson from the Caribbean islands. And she has authored a beautiful book, Rooms Without Walls. And as you know, I'm currently talking about marriage, relationship, healthy marriage connections. And I thought that her book was a very great resource in terms of talking about intimacy.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, Maeve. Hello, everyone. I am Ruth Ferguson. I'm from the Caribbean, as Maeve said. Actually, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, the beautiful republic. Yes, and I published my debut book in April 2024. It's called Room Without Walls, A Transformational Journey. It's about the challenges that I encountered with dealing with trauma and grief. And part of it was during my marriage. It was rocky. I thank God that I was able to place my confidence and my trust in Him. So I'm really grateful to God for that opportunity that I was able to put all my feelings, my thoughts in words and be able to present it to a wider audience to help others. And it's really my prayer that the book will be able to get into the hands of those persons who really need upliftment, who need to get themselves out of a place of grief and dealing with trauma, especially from relationships.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable about that, Ruth. And yes, I believe this podcast is going to be a big resource for those listening because there is nothing that teaches as much as a lived experience. That is really amazing. All right, I'm just going to jump into it. So, Ruth, you often talked about rooms without walls, and that is architectural for me. That creates an architecture, and as we were discussing here in Australia, the building plans don't have walls in so many rooms. So the kitchen doesn't have walls between that and the sitting room. And that is so different from my country of origin, Nigeria. There is walls everywhere. There's walls from the kitchen, and there's walls in the sitting room. And so when I see rooms without walls, how does that architectural mindset help a spouse see a marital problem as a structural challenge rather than a personal failure?
The title of my book came pretty much because the typical homes in the Caribbean, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, are also so many walls. Every room is separated by walls. So in the context of marriage, where I had challenges is establishing those walls. There are healthy boundaries within any relationship, but I was having a challenge, to be honest, in establishing my boundaries. So there was a point in time when, I would allow my husband to say the worst things about me and I wouldn't say anything. I would let him make decisions and then just go along with it. And I also started to do that in the workplace, as well into the workplace. But I realized that it was really affecting me emotionally and mentally. I started to feel my confidence started to really dwindle because I started to feel as if I did not have a voice. And it was a really sad place, and it was a traumatic place for me as well. Growing up, you would still be able to have certain freedoms in, your parents would allow you to speak, even if you were only spoken with, you would have to speak when you're spoken to. But still, within the context of marriage and not being able to find or to have a voice as an adult, it is really a challenge. So I was able to, at least through my challenges, with the help of someone who I came in contact with, who helped me through it, to find my voice again. And that was a beautiful feeling because then I realized that I started to experience a freedom that that I didn't have for years. And then my confidence started to come back. So gradually, I set my boundaries and I told my husband that no, I'm not allowing this anymore. It's either I have a say, I wouldn't allow you to say whatever you want about me, even if you think the worst about me at the time, because we were whether we had a disagreement or whatever. You're not free to say whatever you want to say. So establishing those boundaries really, as I said, give me a freedom that I really appreciated. I started to appreciate life again because at that stage, when I was experiencing the not establishing healthy boundaries, I really started to feel like I didn't want to live anymore. Like there wasn't any reason to live because what is the sense? Should I really exist without a voice? And it's really powerful to understand how much our voice and being ourselves could impact us and even others around us.
Yeah. Wow, that is so profound. And I mean, I'm excited because what you're discussing, and it's interesting again because we didn't talk about this. I didn't know about your personal experience, but this is how amazing the Holy Spirit works. Because my last episode, I was talking about Queen Esther and how she was able to have that strategic confrontation and used her voice and wasn't silent. And I titled the last episode, You're Chosen for This Marriage, How to Confront What is Wrong. One of the things I said that could mean for a woman is to be able to speak up against emotional abuse and say no more and enforce consequences when that doesn't happen. And one of the things I have often said to women is that sadly our men are socialized in patriarchy and we are socialized to keep silent, to keep the peace. The
Yes.
women are socialized and we are not playing on even grounds whatsoever in marriage. Let's be honest.
That's true.
We're not, right? And one of the things that can happen is that a home or a marriage can actually break because the wife is keeping silent. Like it comes to a point, like you described, for want of words, it became a bit suicidal. Like there's
Yes.
no need to stay anymore because of the silence.
Yes.
But until you spoke up and not just find your voice, but use your voice. And I usually say, use your voice even if it is shaking.
Yes. I love that.
And God puts you in a room. When God chooses you, even in a marriage or anywhere, you are chosen. It doesn't matter what your background is. Use that voice, even if it is shaking. And that, I think, is just what you described. I'd like you to speak a little bit more, maybe in practical terms. What does the boundary look like for you? Because when you started explaining rooms without walls, I think it's a two-edged sword. On one hand, it's like, I'll let you take over at this point.
Yes. So the rooms without walls, if you think about the purpose of any wall within a house or even the structure of your home, it's because you want privacy and you want to feel safe. And that's it, even in setting healthy boundaries within a relationship, that we have to understand that it is to protect our peace of mind. It is also so we would feel safe within ourselves, with our voices, and also even for privacy, because even though in a husband and wife relationship, we share so many things. However, everyone is entitled to a certain degree of privacy.
Correct.
So within the context, and that's why, yes, I agree, it is a double-edged sword. It's because it is so real within a relationship. When you don't use it, even it feels even realer, if I can say that. So yes, the typical room of not having, let's say, walls could really, really affect us emotionally, and as mentioned earlier, even mentally. So we can reach to a place where we begin to feel suicidal because it's as if we are silenced. And as I mentioned before, we have lost our voices.
Yeah. And I just want to pause at this point because that's quite sad. And there are so many women listening today that are in that space. I know that by observation as well, both clinically and watching in my community, when the voice is lost. And it's quite sad.
It is.
All right, let's move to the next point. And I'd like to ask you, it's about strategic confrontation. When to have that difficult conversation with our husbands, that scary conversation. Because, and again, I'll look at Queen Esther when Mordecai said something to her that woke her up, and that should wake every woman up. Who knows why you are in the kingdom at such a time like this? I think that I want to announce to women that you are not just Mrs. So-and-so just for the title and the ring. God has chosen you for your husband, and you have a mandate to fulfill. Part of the way to fulfill that mandate is in your voice. And strategic confrontation is one big part of it. Let's talk about it. Because confrontation usually happens when emotions are at a breaking point. And so, what does it look like to move from reactive fighting, yelling, shouting, hurling? And you know we are very good at that as women.
Oh, yes.
And then we break down crying at the same time. Our husbands are very confused that what exactly do you need? I'm not getting you to being able to have what I call strategic confrontation. That requires confidence.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. So, and this is a very important question because I had to learn it. Yes, I got guidance, but I had to learn quite a bit of it on my own through the Holy Spirit. So I started to approach it strategically from the standpoint where I went to God about it because by nature I am introverted. So sometimes I just keep all inside, and sometimes I do the outbursts, but we know that that is not healthy. So back then when I was encountering all these challenges within my marriage, and I went to God about it and I asked him for direction. And one of the things is, because I even mentioned it on my website, so one of the things I started to do is look for opportunities to discuss it in an environment that both of us felt safe.
Okay.
So let's say we were just having a regular conversation and maybe having a little laugh in the conversation. And I decided, okay, maybe this is a good time to bring this up. But whenever I realized, when I looked at his facial expression or listened to his tone, and I see he wasn't accepting it, I gradually or just skillfully changed the topic.
Okay.
But when I realized he was at the point of accepting, then I was able to carefully and cautiously then, mention all the areas that I believe that both he and I had to work on. And that was another strategy in itself, that it was not a matter of pointing fingers, you were wrong, you were mistreating me. I had to highlight that we both had flaws, or both have flaws, and that while I'm working on mine, I just need you to look at yours as well because it's impacting me. So I decided to, as I said, sometimes we would go whenever we went out. Those would even be even better times because we were not in the comfort of our homes. So the opportunity for him to raise his voice, it wouldn't be there because we were in a crowd. We were in a public space. So even if he got annoyed, all he would just grumble, this is not the time for this conversation. Okay, we are out to dinner. And sometimes I would be pressing and said, but this is a good opportunity. We're in a relaxing environment. But why would you bring this up now? We're having such a good time. So I would just have to press someone and say, but this is bothering me. And the more it keeps bothering me, the more it will impact our relationship.
Yeah.
If you don't want our relationship to be strong and healthy, then what is the need for a relationship? Why are we married? So gradually he was accepting. He realized, okay, I had things to say, and he was willing to listen. But it took some time. As I said, it took some strategy. Another thing that was key is, as I said, accepting that we both have flaws. So I had to be in a place where I was forgiving, and that's a big thing. So I would tell him, I understand. I know it was hard for you, certain maybe whatever trauma you were going through, because while I sought counseling, that was not his choice. He
Okay.
was adamant that he didn't want counseling. So I had to ensure that I was the one to reach out. It was very hard. So even as you mentioned Queen Esther, sometimes we are the ones as women to do the work when it comes to emotional work and really
Yeah.
bridging the gap. A lot of times we don't understand really our roles as women. We think that, okay, we are just for the background, we are Mrs. So and so, as you said, but we don't understand that we are the ones to keep our families together in most instances. Yes, our husbands, our spouses do so much to keep the home together financially and whatever they do as a spiritual pillar in the home, but we also have a really serious job to do in keeping our family together spiritually. A lot of it is when we go on our knees, and we have to get that guidance from God. So the first step is always being in a place where we rely totally on God. Even again, as you mentioned, Esther, how she went to God first. She took the advice from her uncle. And we have to ensure that we seek the advice from people who are older than us, who are knowledgeable, who have walked the road before, and not do it on our own. So, yes.
Wow, thank you so much. You have actually talked a lot about the essential tools that every woman, every spouse actually needs in their kit when they decide it's finally time to address what is wrong. The first thing you talked about was prayer, seeking guidance from God. The second thing I heard was about timing, divine
Yes.
timing. Number three that I heard about was choosing the right space to
Yes.
talk about. The other thing I heard about was being empathetic in our
Yes.
language and engagement. And then the last thing I heard about was having a very good team support,
Yes.
finding older women like Peter admonished in the Bible to be on our side, to guide us who are experienced. I think in Esther's case, Mordecai was a very big part of it. So it's okay if a man is
Yes.
also in our team. And which is equally very good because it'll be giving us male perspective
It's true. Very
on the
true.
situation. But it has to be a safe man, what I
Yes.
mean by not someone that will take advantage of the vulnerability that we are in at that time, but safe. All of the people in our network need to be safe
Yes.
for us, not judgmental, respectful, helpful, and who are ready to do the work with us, who are ready to pray with us. In one of my podcasts, I said, stop sharing your marital problems with just well-meaning people. Anyone who is not ready to go on their knees with you, for example,
Yes.
wake up at the midnight and do spiritual warfare with
Yes.
you. Don't share. You don't need to share that story
No,
because,
you don't.
like marriage is spiritual warfare.
It
The
is.
devil hates covenant. And I love the way that you explain that the role that we have as wives, we are the gatekeepers of the emotions in the home. Long ago, I read a book that says the wife is a thermometer of the home's environment.
Oh, yes.
So, if we can master the art of building for restoration, I love what you said again that you were saying, "Hey, we are a team. This is not about throwing fingers at you.
Yes.
I have mine, you have yours. How can we do a restoration and repair?" So, like I said earlier, it's not about venting and shouting and screaming. That is not strategic confrontation. And I think it's the older women that has to say this very clearly to
Yes,
the generation that we have now. Because the venting,
it
you can
doesn't
do that
work.
with a friend,
Yes,
with an older woman. But I think that we need to learn the art of respectfully, strategically confronting our husbands. They are not the same thing, and it's a skill. And I think that you've really explained it in terms of having that strategy is essential tools. Thank you. Is there
you're
anything
welcome.
else you'd like to add? I'll say all you want to say because I really want the women to hear this from a practical point of view and they can tell that this truly works.
What I would say is as well is that it's important to understand where you are at. A lot of times, we as women do not realize, or we may not realize, the stage we're at emotionally. So if you're not emotionally mature to deal with certain things, it makes it even harder for us to approach a situation. So, as you mentioned, Maeve, it's important to surround ourselves with mature women, and it's also important, even spiritually mature. So, places that we have never been before, they would have been an experience. So, we have to draw on that knowledge, draw on those experiences. So the maturity plays a really important part. That is one thing that I had to learn, that with men, raising your voice really doesn't help a situation. Even if he does, a lot of times we as the women, we are the ones, as you said, we are like the thermometer, or we are the ones to balance everything with the emotions. I know sometimes it's really hard for us as women because we like to flare up sometimes. I think we find gratification in it, that we could just vent. It feels good to vent. It's good to vent, but it's better to vent with other women, and not just anyone, as you mentioned, Maeve, those who are willing to go in prayer with us.
Yeah.
Those are the ones
Thank
we
you.
have to vent with. So my thing is that if you haven't gotten anything else from this session with me, is that ensure that you are able to balance your emotions.
You just touched on the ideology of feeling chosen, the weight of choice, the idea that we are chosen for a specific marriage and its specific struggles can be very heavy, right? No two marriages are the same, no two couples are the same. How does that belief change the way we approach a difficult spouse? Because if a listener feels like they are a mismatch or impossible situation, how can they begin to see that difficulty as a divine assignment rather than a mistake? Every now and then, I keep remembering where you said, I'm introverted, I'm still camera shy. How did that feel for you at the beginning when the whole confusion was going on with the challenge in the marriage? Did you feel like I'm mismatched for this? Or were there ever times you felt like, man, did I make a mistake? Because there is that weight of choice. Confusion is part of it when the difficulty kicks in.
Yes. So yes, I found myself in that situation where I started to question myself, was it really, am I in a relationship that is within the will of God? I knew, yes, that God orchestrates everything, but we are the ones that He has given a choice. So we have our God-given choice. So I started questioning, okay, did I make a choice that was outside of God's will? But then I had to remind myself, and even my confidant reminded me that God does never make a mistake. So even if we put ourselves in a situation that is outside of what we think is the will of God, a lot of times God is building character in the situation. We may not understand if we have maybe experienced childhood traumas. A lot of persons may not even realize that until they get into an adult relationship. And sometimes these things actually come out of the challenges. So when our spouse happen to flare up or we have disagreements, then we realize, okay, well, I probably could be the problem as well. So again, it was understanding that God doesn't make a mistake. So what I had to do again is go to God and ask God for help, because I really started to feel as if I was bearing a cross that I should not be bearing. But I reminded myself that Jesus said, if any man must come after me, he must first deny himself and take up his cross and follow him. So I started to reflect and say, okay, Lord, I'm trying to deny myself, but it's hard. There were times when I was crying and I would just be saying, Lord, I'm trying to deny myself, but it's hard. I keep saying that, and God knows us so well that even when it feels like the cross is too heavy to bear, He sends along somebody to help us. So I started having, my confidant when I started telling her that I just can't do this anymore. She kept telling me, she said, God is building character, and you would never know until you reach the other side what is your reward. She said, who knows? You're probably the person set up to help him with his childhood trauma. And
we don't like to hear that, do we?
It was so hard, because even when she told me that, I remember the tears were just rolling down my cheeks, because it was like, but how could I help him? And I'm feeling like if I'm a victim, how could I help anybody at this stage? So she said, I'm going to put it to a group of ladies and we are going to pray. We are going to pray for your breakthrough. And whenever I speak to her, she said, we are still praying for you. Don't give up. Press through, press through. And she kept telling me that. And the more she kept telling me that, the more I felt encouraged that there were people standing with me spiritually in the gap. And that was so profound, because a lot of times we like to see people physically there with us, but it's not always possible for them to be there in person to support us, to give us the hug and the reassurance we need physically. But in the realm of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, He's the one who is our ultimate comforter. So He knows how to get in there and really give us the comfort we need, and even the other person. So as we approach a situation prayerfully, there is where the Holy Spirit, He could just come in. He can work. He could work on us because we have opened the door and we have become vulnerable. And that is what God wants us to be, vulnerable before Him. We shouldn't long to be vulnerable so much among other people, unless, as you said, Maeve, earlier, that is people who are willing to war in the Spirit with us. But anytime you're vulnerable before God, there is where God does a magnificent work that even baffles you. Because I remember things started to change gradually. I started to change, where things that used to bother me, things that had me crying, it no longer affected me. It was like I was in the kitchen doing dishes and singing. And I remember certain times before my husband was transformed to the place where he is now, he would be, why, you mocking me or something? Because we just had an argument, let's say, and I went to the kitchen and I was just singing and humming, and the joy of the Lord was just there flowing. And he started to get really irritated. It's almost as if he thought, as I said, that I was mocking him. But all that was taking place is with his transformation was beginning with me first. And gradually it started to spill over, because I started to treat my home even more as an altar. So when he would go out, I would be on my knees praying and crying and seeking the face of God. And there is where, as I said, I got the breakthrough. So I no longer started to feel as if it was a weight. I no longer was feeling as if I'm in the wrong relationship. I started to think about that word called purpose. And God always has a divine purpose, even in the middle of a situation where we think that is beyond us, or maybe a mistake. We made the wrong choice. Because you would even see in scripture how God was so merciful even when people made mistakes. Even Moses, when he struck the rock, God still allowed him to go up into the mountain and see the promised land. So God still allows us opportunity to come out and be blessed in the middle of a situation for his purpose, because we don't know a lot of times what God is setting us up for.
Correct.
Sometimes
I just want you to drop that mic there because that was something strong you just said. A lot of us do not know the divine assignments we have, the callings and purpose we have in our marriages, in our employments and things like that. We assume and think we do know.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But when God starts unfolding, and I think usually when we have kind of aligned with the assignment, accepted it and not struggle with it, it starts dawning on us.
Yes.
All right, now I see why I am here. I'm
Yes.
not here because I'm pretty.
Oh, yes.
I'm not here because I'm brilliant and I have many degrees.
We would love to think so.
I'm not here because my dad is wealthy. No,
So,
I came here on an assignment. Gosh,
yes.
I know if we keep talking about that, we're gonna talk about that for a long time
That's a
because
topic on a different level.
correct. I think we should have this again and talk about fulfilling divine assignments in marriages.
Yes.
Because what you described also touched on when you start recognizing the task in front of you, feelings of inadequacy can take over. After confusion, then you come into feelings of inadequacy
Yes.
because you feel almost confronted and intimidated by the tasks in front of you in that divine assignment. And like you rightly said, it will compel you to go on your knees. I must say this at this point, if you're listening, what Ruth and I are describing is that defining moment where it suddenly dawned on you that you're not just wearing a ring to be a missus, that you came on an assignment. And I have observed that most people give up at this point.
Mm.
And that's exactly what hell wants. And I'm not for divorce. I'm not against divorce. I'm not going to go into that debate. However, I know that there are times God calls women to fight for their marriages.
Yes.
That's all I'm just going to say. And those defining moments, they are one of the most challenging moments a wife can go through.
Certainly.
I'll leave that there. The last question I'll be asking is around navigating the rooms that you described in your book. So, for example, the living room versus the basement. You discussed different rooms, right, of intimacy and life. Which room is usually the hardest for couples to clean up or renovate together?
Yes, so the intimacy part is, it could be very challenging when you haven't established the healthy boundaries. So, because,
Which intimacy are we talking about here, Ruth? Is it the emotional intimacy or
yes,
sexual intimacy? Which one?
both, actually, both. Yes, because as I mentioned, when we lose our voices, we are not
Yeah.
free to actually speak. And a lot of the communication that we would have with our spouse, we would not have with others outside of the home. So that in itself is a level of intimacy, because it's always healthy to have your spouse as a friend, somebody who you could confide in within the walls. So yes, you would have, let's say, a best friend or somebody, but there are certain things, whether because you share your children, you share responsibilities, no one else would be exposed to that level of intimacy emotionally, if you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think I have an idea.
Yes. So yes,
Marriage gives
yes.
us proximity and access than anyone else. It's just the way marriage is designed, isn't it?
Exactly. But the sexual intimacy, it's a totally different level. But again, finding your voice helps with all the different aspects of intimacy within a relationship. within a husband and wife relationship. So the walls are very important. So at least you know you have your peace, you have your personality, because one of the things I mentioned is being able to, in my book, is being able to keep your individuality. And that is the purpose of each space within. So going back to your question, that is the reason for each space, because we would design a space, whether it's the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, somewhat the layout should be suitable for what we want or what it is comfortable. So let's say we want the living room, we want a certain size, we want certain furniture, etc. And even as you transmit that into the relationship, there is where we look at it from a deeper perspective, that my individuality, as I mentioned, I'm an introvert. How could I use my introversion in my relationship to still benefit the relationship? Am I just going to lose my voice because I'm introverted? No. I'm going to use it in an impactful way. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to shout. I like my personal space. So whenever I got my personal space, I enjoyed it. So let's say I had my hobbies and all these things. So the reason for, again, the different rooms is because we want to be comfortable. Let's say our study or an office space in our home. It is set up in such a way that we focus on what we want to do. We want to focus on the study or the work. So it's the same thing even with us, our personalities. We want to focus on developing ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that, because I was going to ask you, how do we confront the silence in a marriage, in those rooms where the couples are simply not talking anymore? It talks a lot about emotional intimacy, and that is so important if there's going to be any sexual intimacy at all. Women most often shut down sexually with their husbands when there is emotional distancing.
Yes.
And I like that your example is so relevant. You said you were introverted, and most men are socialized not to communicate emotions and feelings. So it's almost like you were struggling with losing your voice and finding your voice, and probably most likely your husband was not even talking emotions to start with. So
No.
there is that bottled up,
Yes.
suppressed feelings. You were probably in the room where there's no talking going on.
Very
You know
little.
what I mean? No talking going on. And what you just described is some of the very practical experiences that are typical of some couples. Both could be introverted, right? The wife is introverted, the husband is introverted. Then men are socialized not to talk about feelings and all that. And then the woman is introverted to start with. Someone has got to learn the communication skills. And most often it's the women, because we are socialized to talk, right?
Yes.
But an introvert was not in the class. They didn't get the memo.
I think we got the memo, but we probably ignored it.
I mean, I'm an introvert myself. But I think, and most times people don't realize that. They assume that I'm extroverted because I talk. I do talking for a living, right? Talking and listening is what I do for a living. I think that, like your experience, you had to develop the skill of communication.
Yes.
And what happened was that then you went to coach your husband. I am doing communication skills training here. I'm going to co-opt you into the class.
Yes.
We're doing it together.
Exactly.
And very often, that is the dynamic. Very often, men don't volunteer to go for counseling. When you see a man in the counseling room, the wife has given him an ultimatum.
Yes. Yes.
The wife has told him, no counseling, I'm out. And the man is like, oh my gosh, I still want this marriage. So,
Yes.
well, because very often that's what I get. My wife said I should come in. So that's why I'm here. So thank you so much for sharing that part of and being vulnerable
You're
around
welcome.
personality. And it just goes to show that this work of communication skill, in your own metaphor, is finding your voice and using your voice.
Yes.
Because really that's effective communication skills.
Yes.
being able to say, you are hurting me when you put your leg on this part of my neck. Put your leg down.
Yeah.
And you say the first time, it's like, I said the neck is hurting me. Put your leg down.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes you have to repeat it and repeat it. And I would like to say this as we finalize on this particular um, subtopic. From what I've observed, men don't hear where you're talking. Most men learn when you start enforcing consequences.
Yes.
When you're busy narrating and coaching and doing talking and explaining, you're still on the feminine level, right? That's what we women do.
Yes.
When we're talking to each other, once we finish talking, we get each other. Is that what you said? Yeah. Oh, that must be sad. Oh my gosh, we get it.
Yes.
Then we carry the same approach to talk to men. They don't, not many of them get it that way.
Yes, that's
Most
true.
men get it when you start enforcing consequences.
That is so true. Unfortunately, it is true.
And so I usually would say being practical, confronting that silence is being practical around what we want. Write your husband a letter if you need to write him the letter. Put it in the letter so that he's very clear about what your needs are.
Yes.
This is what it is. 10. 10 of it.
Yes.
Then tell him reply if you like. Then we talk and go and have a coffee and discuss what that means for you. And once you've done that, back off. And when you back off, go praying, back off, go do your hobby, back off, go do your thing. If it is violated, enforce the consequence. Now, enforcing consequences is not punishment. It's actually a sign of protection for yourself and for him as well. And very often they get the message. All right, that lecture she gave me 3 weeks ago, she means it. This is the consequence.
Yes, exactly.
Could you speak to that as we round up? Because I think most women struggle around that. The fear to enforce consequences. Maybe they see it as punishment versus protection.
Yes, I believe a lot of us probably, because of our upbringing, we would have known that certain consequences, it was because, okay, we did something wrong. And a lot of us, even when we become adults, we don't like to admit again that we are wrong and we have faults. And unfortunately, a lot of men do not readily accept when they are wrong either. We do it quite a bit because we like to be wrong and strong, but men even more so, I find, unfortunately. It could be because, they are built to be tough and so forth.
Yes.
So it could be...
It's the entitlement and patriarchy.
Yes. So it could be very intimidating. That is the word I would use for us as women to be able to make a stand for something and to be able to, it comes across to them as a threat a lot of times. So when we say, okay, well, if you're not going for counseling, I am done with this relationship. I'm taking the kids, we are moving on. So
Many
he would
times
take...
we don't mean it.
Yes, but he takes it as a threat. So by the time you mention it about 3 times, he is upset because you are threatening him. And men don't like to feel threatened. So it takes a certain amount of strength to be able to, and even some strategy as well, that you're very careful how you put across the threat. A lot of times it's not what we say, but it's how we say it. So shouting would not help. Let's say if we do it in the middle of an argument or some disagreement and we say, okay, well, I'm just moving on. Instead, it's the approach that we take where we have to say, well, I've tried all that I've had. You call him by your name and you say, well, I try all that I can. I don't have the strength anymore to keep fighting and going through this anymore. It's draining me.
And even then, leaving the marriage is not necessarily the next option. I think a lot of us don't realize that that is usually the last option. And there are so
Yes.
many, many options and consequences along the way. And very often when we even threaten exit, we don't, because we don't even have the capacity to
No,
do it
no, we
emotionally.
don't.
So I think that is probably where counseling comes in, because
Yes.
there are different stages of consequences.
Mm-hmm.
The repair work is going on, where you're asking for accountability, where you're asking for honesty, full self-disclosure, where you're
Yes.
asking for being more present, engaging more, taking leadership in making decisions. It could be something as simple as, I'm still going to take myself on a vacation if you don't book one for me or for the family. And you actually book that vacation for yourself and leave.
Yes.
Or I give you an example. I knew a couple where the wife kept saying, I need to change my phone. My phone is bad. Please, I'd like you to drive me. They just came into the country at the time, so she
Mm-hmm.
hadn't learned how to drive in Australia, but the husband was driving. And she said, please take me to the store. And he kept procrastinating. And he kept, procrastinating on it. And one day she said to me, I just took the car,
Yes.
drove to the store, bought my phone, a brand new phone, on installmental payment in our combined account,
Yes.
bank account, latest Samsung phone, got home, they showed everybody, her husband, yay! But she said on her way, she bumped into someone in the front,
My.
and then the person came down, and she came down, and the person looked at it and said, okay, not too bad. Don't do that again. And drove off. And she was like, so I could drive myself
Yes.
regardless. And she got home and she felt so fulfilled. So she did it fearfully. Guess what? She said to me her husband went to the store the next week to buy himself a phone.
Yes. Yes.
So it can be those little consequences, but as simple as they are, they're very effective. To
Yes,
say
that's
that I
true.
can go on this on my own, I can take myself out if you wouldn't, I can, prioritize my fitness, right? And I can prioritize my sleep. I'm sorry, I'm not staying out late. Or if it's a husband, for example, you've probably complained to your husband, stop coming home late because
Mhm.
you're not closing at the right time at work.
Yes.
There's always something that keeps you back, one
Yes.
extra meeting that keeps you back. All your colleagues would have left. You will be the only one staying. Then you come home late after dinner, and the wife can decide, you know what, I'm not going to wait for you to come back
No.
home before we have dinner. We're going to eat the dinner without you.
Yes, and then I
And I'm
go to
going to
bed.
leave yours. I'll leave yours in the pot,
Yes.
unscooped.
Yes.
And you eat it by yourself. And the first night the man comes back, he notices, and then maybe you even say, I'll leave the key at the doormat. You open the door yourself because we've gone to bed.
Yes, exactly. And yes,
Such
and that's
consequences.
so important. And that's why I mention things like that, ways that we could preserve our peace of mind. So if this is what we want, go after it once it's not something that is illegal, illicit, or damaging to
Yeah,
ourselves or relationship.
yeah.
Go do it yourself and ensure that you are happy, you have that peace of mind and that space.
Wow, this is so beautiful. As we round off, I'll just ask you about the legacy. What do you hope is a lasting structure that is left behind when a couple chooses to do the hard work of strategic confrontation? What's the lasting structure, the legacy they leave for their children, even for herself as a woman?
I believe a lot of times women make the decision too because of their children, sometimes because of their background. So I came from a home where my parents remained together through thick and thin. So I felt like and then that same debate about divorce, it was there overshadowing me. Making that hard decision it was really tough, but then I remembered how it may impact my children, I remembered how it would impact even my family, other people who are looking on and probably thinking, wow, I admire how this couple is. Because a lot of times we don't realize how much our relationship impact other person's relationship. People look at us and model us so much, and we are unaware. Just like how our children would look at us and mirror us, and then when they become adults, they are this spitting image of us. Even the way we behave, again, it does impact us because we feel a sense of achievement, and we see then our faith is strengthened because we realize, wow, if God could actually do this, what else could he do? We're at a place where our minds are totally blown away of the power of God and how
Yeah.
he alone could transform, because that is what it takes, a transformation. And that is what my book is about, transformation. So that transformation spills over into others, because then we could use the same word, purpose, our divine assignment. We could use this to be able to minister effectively to others. So that is how it's going to affect others, our home, our relatives, and then the wider audience of those people we are supposed to reach.
Wow. Thank you so much. I love
You're
how
welcome.
you've beautifully crafted that legacy, transgenerational blessings of passing on the blessing of marriage. Marriage is a blessing, and
It is.
it's challenging and rewarding, and we have the responsibility to steward it and hopefully pass it on to our children and the children and the next generation.
Yes.
So, Ruth, how can people find you, and where can they find your book?
Okay, my book is sold on Amazon, all Amazon stores, the US, Canada, UK, the far reach. So you can just Google Room Without Walls, A Transformational Journey, and you can find my book, or you could Google Ruth Ferguson. My website is www.rfwrittenlegacy.biz.
Oh, all right.
So
That
you
would be
would
great.
see, yes, some more information about me, also about my book, some posts that I've done. So I've also done some blogs, including about learning the art of forgiveness and those things, and how to have those difficult conversations. So what I mentioned earlier, I actually do have a blog about it. How do you actually set up that space and the time and all these things to have the difficult conversation? So that's how you can find me. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity, Maeve. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. And thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for listening to everyone.
Thank you so much, Ruth. It was such a pleasure having you on today's podcast. I knew that definitely there was a reason God allowed for us to have this podcast, because none of the things we discussed here were discussed before now. These were just fresh conversations that were happening in real time, and it was worth the wait. I'm now 5 minutes to midnight to February
19th.
which
My
is
gosh.
beautiful. I'm glad that we had this conversation, and I'm confident it would bless our listeners both now and in the future. I think a lot of women will find this very resourceful. I will leave Ruth Ferguson's contact details in the description notes if you're listening and you want to get rooms without walls. Like she mentioned, I believe this would be a wonderful resource. And thank you, everyone, for the patience to listen to this beautiful, detailed podcast on strategic confrontation and divine appointment of marriage. Until next episode, stay beautiful, stay confident, stay prayed up. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
All right. Thank you for spending time with me today on Emotional Healing for Christian Women. If this episode blessed you, please leave a review and share it with a friend who needs encouragement. And don't forget to download my new book, Beyond the Hurt, from my website, marveladeyemi.com.au, and other free resources. Until next time, stay healed, stay beautiful, and stay confident.